Welcome to Quiet Night Chronicles. Tonight, we embark on a gentle journey into one of history's most intriguing mysteries. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine walking through the bustling streets of ancient Rome or standing in the grand temples of Egypt. What sounds would have filled the air? What melodies would have drifted from windows and courtyards? The truth is, the sounds of ancient civilizations are hauntingly absent from our modern world, leaving us to wonder what music and voices once filled the air. These acoustic landscapes, once vibrant with human expression, have largely vanished into silence. Tonight, we'll explore how researchers and musicians are working to resurrect these lost soundscapes, bringing ancient melodies back to life through careful study and innovative technology. Our journey will take us from the earliest known musical notations to the grand amphitheaters of antiquity. We'll discover how the absence of recorded sound from our past creates both a challenge and an opportunity. By examining artifacts, interpreting ancient texts, and using cutting-edge acoustic modeling, we're beginning to hear whispers of what our ancestors heard every day. This is a story of detective work, imagination, and the universal human need to create and share music. So settle in comfortably as we listen for the echoes of ancient worlds, exploring how these rediscovered sounds enrich our understanding of history, culture, and the timeless power of human expression. The silence of the past is slowly giving way to a new appreciation of our musical heritage, one careful note at a time. The challenge of reconstructing the sounds of past cultures presents researchers with a fascinating puzzle that requires both scientific rigor and creative interpretation. Unlike visual artifacts that can be directly observed, sounds exist only in the moment of their creation, making the acoustic world of antiquity one of the most elusive aspects of historical study. The scarcity of recorded audio is, of course, an obvious obstacle, but the difficulties run much deeper than simple technological limitations. Ancient instruments, when they survive at all, often reach us in fragmentary condition. A broken lyre, missing half its strings, or a flute with damaged finger holes can only tell us part of its story. Even perfectly preserved instruments present challenges, as we must interpret not only their construction, but also the techniques used to play them. The way ancient musicians held their instruments, the breathing techniques they employed, the fingering patterns they used, all of these performance practices have been lost to time. Written descriptions of musical performances from ancient texts often use metaphorical or poetic language that can be difficult to translate into practical musical terms. When Plato writes about the mathematical relationships in music, or when ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs describe ceremonial chants, we're left to interpret meanings that may have been crystal clear to their original audiences, but remain tantalizingly vague to us. Archaeological context adds another layer of complexity. Finding an instrument in a tomb tells us something about its cultural significance, but little about how it actually sounded in daily life. The acoustic properties of ancient performance spaces have changed dramatically over millennia, with many venues now in ruins or completely buried. Researchers must account for everything from the original wall surfaces that would have affected sound reflection to the clothing and crowd densities that would have influenced the overall acoustic environment of these lost musical worlds. Despite these challenges, the field of musical archaeology has made remarkable strides in recent decades, developing innovative approaches to unlock the secrets of ancient sound. One of the most promising avenues involves the careful reconstruction of ancient instruments based on archaeological finds. Master craftsmen work alongside musicologists to recreate lyres, harps, and wind instruments using traditional materials and techniques. These reproductions allow researchers to explore the tonal qualities and playing techniques that would have been available to ancient musicians. Computer modeling has revolutionized our understanding of ancient acoustics by creating detailed three-dimensional models of archaeological sites. Researchers can simulate how sound would have behaved in these spaces thousands of years ago. The great theatre of Epidaurus in Greece, for example, has been extensively studied to understand how its remarkable acoustic properties allowed actors to be heard clearly by audiences of thousands without amplification. This technology helps us imagine not just what ancient music sounded like, but how it would have been experienced by contemporary listeners. Ethnomusicology provides another crucial piece of the puzzle. By studying musical traditions that have remained relatively unchanged over centuries, particularly in isolated communities, researchers can identify elements that may have been present in ancient musical systems. Certain scales, rhythmic patterns, and vocal techniques found in traditional music around the world may preserve echoes of much older musical practices. These living traditions serve as a bridge between past and present, offering clues about musical elements that written records alone cannot provide. Interdisciplinary collaboration has become essential to this work. Archaeologists, musicians, acousticians, computer scientists, and historians must work together to piece together these sonic puzzles. Each discipline brings unique tools and perspectives to the challenge. An archaeologist might uncover the physical remains of an instrument, while a computer scientist develops algorithms to model its sound, and a musician explores the practical aspects of performance technique that bring the ancient object to life once again in meaningful ways. Let's begin our exploration with ancient Mesopotamia, often called the cradle of civilization, where some of humanity's earliest musical expressions took shape. In the fertile valleys between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the Sumerians developed not only the first known writing system, but also some of our earliest evidence of organized musical culture. Archaeological excavations at sites like Ur and Mari have revealed elaborate musical instruments that speak to the sophistication of Mesopotamian musical life. The famous golden lyre of Queen Puabi, discovered in the royal cemetery at Ur, represents the pinnacle of ancient craftsmanship and musical artistry. This instrument, dating to around 2600 BCE, features a bull's head made of gold and lapis lazuli, with strings that would have produced rich, resonant tones. When researchers created faithful reproductions of this lyre, they discovered a surprisingly complex harmonic palette. The tuning system appears to have been based on mathematical ratios that create intervals both familiar and exotic to modern ears. Cuneiform tablets from the ancient city of Nippur contain what may be the world's oldest written music, including instructions for tuning and playing various instruments. These tablets describe musical intervals using terminology that suggests a sophisticated understanding of harmonic relationships. The Mesopotamians appear to have developed a system of musical modes centuries before the Greeks, with specific scales associated with different gods, ceremonies, and times of day. Temple music played a central role in Mesopotamian religious life, with professional musicians maintaining elaborate musical traditions passed down through generations of priestly families. The soundscape of ancient Mesopotamian cities would have been rich with musical expression, from the ceremonial fanfares announcing royal processions to the work songs that helped coordinate group labor on massive construction projects. Market vendors would have called their wares in musical phrases, and religious festivals would have filled the streets with processions accompanied by drums, cymbals, and stringed instruments whose rhythms echoed off the mud brick walls of these ancient urban centers. The journey continues as we travel down the Nile to ancient Egypt, where music held profound spiritual significance and played an essential role in both earthly and divine realms. Egyptian tomb paintings and hieroglyphic inscriptions provide us with detailed visual evidence of musical practices, showing musicians playing harps, lutes, flutes, and percussion instruments in a variety of contexts. The famous tomb of Nebamun, dating to around 1400 BCE, contains vivid depictions of musicians performing at banquets, their instruments rendered with such precision that modern craftsmen have been able to create accurate reproductions. Egyptian music was intimately connected to the spiritual realm, with specific chants and instrumental pieces designed to facilitate communication with the gods and ensure safe passage to the afterlife. The Edwin Smith Papyrus and other ancient texts describe how certain musical intervals were believed to have healing properties, while temple musicians underwent years of training to master the precise intonations required for religious ceremonies. Professional harpists held positions of great respect in Egyptian society, often serving in the temples of major deities, like Hathor, the goddess of music and joy. The reconstruction of Egyptian musical scales has revealed a system quite different from modern Western music. Based on surviving instruments and theoretical texts, Egyptian musicians appear to have used scales with intervals that create a distinctly exotic sound to contemporary ears. These scales often feature neutral intervals, falling between the half and whole steps familiar in Western music, creating melodies that seem to hover between major and minor modes. Temple chants would have filled the massive stone chambers with reverberant tones that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. The acoustic properties of Egyptian temples were carefully designed to enhance the spiritual impact of musical performance, with precisely calculated proportions that would amplify certain frequencies while dampening others. When modern researchers have recreated these chants in reconstructed temple spaces, the effect is both haunting and deeply moving, suggesting the profound impact these musical rituals must have had on ancient worshippers seeking connection with the divine through the power of organized sound. Now we turn our attention to ancient Greece, where music theory as we know it began to take shape, and where the relationship between mathematics and music was first systematically explored. The Greeks developed a sophisticated understanding of musical intervals based on mathematical ratios, with Pythagoras and his followers demonstrating that pleasant-sounding harmonies corresponded to simple numerical relationships. This discovery laid the foundation for Western music theory and influenced musical thought for millennia to come. Greek musical culture was inseparable from poetry and drama, with the great tragedies and comedies of Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Aristophanes, originally performed with extensive musical accompaniment. The chorus, which played such a crucial role in Greek theatre, was primarily a musical ensemble, with singers and dancers moving in carefully choreographed patterns while performing complex musical compositions. Archaeological evidence suggests that Greek theatrical performances were much more musical in nature than modern audiences might imagine, with dialogue delivered in a style somewhere between speech and song. The kithara, a large lyre that served as the premier instrument of professional musicians, could produce a wide range of tones and effects. Master kithara players were celebrities in ancient Greece, traveling from city to city to perform at religious festivals and civic celebrations. These instruments were constructed with multiple sound chambers and sophisticated tuning mechanisms that allowed for complex musical expression. When modern craftsmen have recreated ancient kitharas based on archaeological evidence, the resulting instruments prove capable of remarkable versatility and dynamic range. Greek musical education was considered essential for the development of good character, with Plato and Aristotle both writing extensively about music's role in shaping moral behavior and intellectual development. The Greeks identified specific musical modes with particular emotional and ethical qualities, believing that exposure to certain scales could influence personality and behavior. This connection between music and character formation became a cornerstone of educational philosophy that persisted well into the medieval period and beyond. The soundscape of ancient Athens would have been filled with musical activity, from the formal performances in the great theatres to the impromptu musical competitions that emerged spontaneously in the agora and other public spaces where citizens gathered to exchange ideas. Roman civilization inherited much from the Greeks, but developed its own distinctive musical culture that reflected the empire's vast scale and cultural diversity. Roman music incorporated influences from across the Mediterranean world, blending Greek theatrical sophistication with Egyptian religious traditions, Celtic folk melodies, and musical elements from conquered territories throughout Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. This cosmopolitan musical culture created a rich and varied soundscape that reflected the empire's unprecedented cultural synthesis. The Romans were master engineers, and this expertise extended to musical instruments and performance venues. Roman theaters and amphitheaters featured sophisticated acoustic design that could project sound clearly to audiences of tens of thousands. The Colosseum, while famous for its gladiatorial contests, also hosted elaborate musical performances with orchestras and choruses that could fill the massive space with sound. Archaeological evidence suggests that Roman engineers understood principles of acoustics that weren't rediscovered until the modern era. Roman military music played a crucial role in maintaining discipline and communication across the empire's vast armies. Military musicians used a variety of brass instruments, including the bucina and cornu, to signal commands across battlefields and coordinate complex maneuvers. These instruments produced powerful, carrying tones that could be heard over the noise of combat and could communicate specific tactical information through standardized musical phrases. The precision and discipline of Roman military music reflected the broader organizational genius that enabled a single city to control territory, spanning from Britain to Mesopotamia. Religious music in Roman culture was incredibly diverse, reflecting the empire's tolerance for various spiritual traditions. Traditional Roman ceremonies featured ancient chants and instrumental music, while mystery cults, imported from the East, brought their own distinctive musical practices. Christian music began to emerge during the later empire, eventually developing into the sophisticated chant traditions that would dominate medieval Europe. This religious musical diversity created urban soundscapes of remarkable complexity, with different neighborhoods resonating with the musical expressions of various spiritual communities throughout the day and seasonal calendar. Private musical entertainment reached new levels of sophistication during the Roman period, with wealthy citizens employing professional musicians to perform at elaborate dinner parties and social gatherings. Roman banquet music incorporated elements from across the known world, creating fusion styles that combined Greek modal theory with Celtic folk melodies, Egyptian ceremonial chants, and indigenous Italian musical traditions. These private performances provide us with some of our best evidence for how ancient music actually sounded in intimate settings, away from the formal constraints of religious or civic ceremonies. Now comes the most thrilling part of our journey, a moment when careful research and creative imagination converge to bring the past to vivid life. Picture yourself in the theater of Marcellus on a warm Roman evening in the 1st century CE. The sun is setting behind the 7 hills, casting long shadows across the tiered seating as 20,000 spectators settle in for an evening of entertainment. The air buzzes with conversation in a dozen languages, reflecting the cosmopolitan nature of imperial Rome, where citizens and visitors from across the Mediterranean world have gathered to experience the empire's cultural pinnacle. As the performance begins, the orchestra takes its position in the semicircular space before the stage. The musicians carry instruments that represent the full diversity of Roman musical culture: Greek lyres and kitharas, Egyptian sistra and drums, Celtic horns, and distinctly Roman innovations like the hydraulis, an early water organ capable of producing sustained tones and complex harmonies. When the conductor raises his staff, a hush falls over the massive audience, and the first notes begin to fill the carefully designed acoustic space. The sound that emerges is unlike anything in our modern musical experience. The tuning systems create intervals that seem to hover between familiar and exotic, while the timbres of authentic ancient instruments produce colors and textures that modern orchestras cannot replicate. Voices join the instruments, singing in modes that create emotional effects, both stirring and strange to contemporary ears. The hydraulis provides a sustained harmonic foundation, while strings and winds weave melodies that seem to dance around each other in sophisticated counterpoint. This is not primitive music, but rather a highly developed art form that represents centuries of cultural evolution and artistic refinement. As the performance builds to its climax, the full power of Roman musical culture becomes apparent, demonstrating a level of sophistication and emotional depth that challenges any assumption about the primitive nature of ancient entertainment. This dramatic recreation helps us understand that the Romans didn't simply preserve Greek musical traditions, but transformed them into something uniquely their own, creating a musical culture that served both as entertainment and as a powerful tool for cultural unity across their vast and diverse empire. The importance of preserving and reconstructing these ancient sounds extends far beyond mere academic curiosity, touching the very heart of what it means to be human. Music has always been one of our most fundamental forms of expression, a universal language that transcends cultural boundaries and speaks directly to our emotions and spirits. When we lose access to the musical traditions of our ancestors, we lose a crucial part of our collective human heritage, a dimension of historical understanding that written records and visual artifacts simply cannot provide. The work of musical archaeologists and ethnomusicologists represents a form of cultural rescue that becomes more urgent with each passing year. Just as environmental conservationists work to preserve endangered species, these researchers labor to prevent the complete extinction of musical traditions that once enriched human experience across the globe. Their efforts help us understand not just what ancient people accomplished, but how they felt, what moved them, and how they understood their relationship to the sacred and the sublime through the power of organized sound. Modern technology continues to open new possibilities for this important work. Digital modeling allows researchers to test hypotheses about ancient performance practices in ways that would have been impossible just a generation ago. High-resolution scanning of archaeological artifacts reveals construction details that help us understand how ancient instruments were made and played. Acoustic modeling software can recreate the sound environments of long-destroyed performance spaces, allowing us to experience something approximating the acoustic conditions that shaped ancient musical traditions. These technological tools, combined with traditional musicological research and careful craftsmanship, are gradually filling in the silence left by thousands of years of lost musical traditions. The interdisciplinary nature of this work also demonstrates the value of collaborative research that brings together diverse areas of expertise. When archaeologists, musicians, computer scientists, and historians work together, they achieve insights that none could reach working alone. This collaboration model has applications far beyond the study of ancient music, suggesting new approaches to complex problems that require multiple perspectives and diverse methodological approaches. The success of musical archaeology demonstrates how different fields of knowledge can complement and strengthen each other when researchers are willing to step outside their traditional disciplinary boundaries. Furthermore, this research enriches our contemporary musical culture by expanding our understanding of human musical possibilities. Modern composers and performers who work with reconstructed ancient music often find their own artistic perspectives transformed by exposure to scales, rhythms, and timbres that mainstream Western music has forgotten. This cross-pollination between ancient and modern musical traditions creates new possibilities for artistic expression while honoring the achievements of our musical ancestors. The influence flows in both directions, with contemporary musical insights helping to inform our reconstructions of ancient practices, while ancient musical wisdom opens new creative possibilities for modern artists. As we reach the end of tonight's exploration, we can appreciate how the patient work of researchers around the world is gradually lifting the veil of silence that has shrouded our musical past. Each reconstructed instrument, each decoded piece of ancient notation, each successful acoustic simulation brings us closer to understanding the full richness of human musical expression throughout history. These recovered sounds don't just fill museums and academic conferences. They enrich our contemporary musical landscape and deepen our understanding of the continuity of human artistic achievement across time and culture. The echoes of ancient music remind us that the impulse to create and share musical beauty has been with humanity from our earliest civilizations, connecting us across millennia through the universal language of organized sound. The resonance of these ancient musical traditions continues to grow stronger as more researchers take up this fascinating work. Universities around the world are establishing programs in musical archaeology, while musicians and craftspeople dedicate themselves to mastering the techniques needed to bring ancient instruments back to life. Digital archives are preserving both the artifacts themselves and the knowledge gained from studying them, ensuring that future generations will have even better tools for understanding our musical heritage. This growing community of researchers, artists, and enthusiasts represents hope for continued discovery and deeper understanding of the soundtrack to human civilization. What we've discovered tonight represents just the beginning of what promises to be an ongoing revelation about the musical wisdom of our ancestors and its continuing relevance to our contemporary search for meaning and beauty through sound. If you found this journey through ancient soundscapes peaceful and enlightening, I encourage you to subscribe to Quiet Night Chronicles for more restful explorations into the fascinating corners of human knowledge and achievement. Our quiet community continues to grow as we discover together the calming power of learning and the gentle satisfaction that comes from understanding our shared human story. Please share your thoughts about tonight's exploration in the comments below. Have you ever wondered about the sounds of ancient civilizations? Are there particular musical traditions or historical periods you'd like us to explore in future episodes? Your curiosity and insights help guide our journey through the peaceful realms of knowledge and discovery. Until next time, may the echoes of ancient melodies bring harmony to your dreams and sleep well, knowing that the human voice has been raised in song since the beginning of recorded history, creating an unbroken chain of musical expression that connects us all across the vast expanse of time and space.